Hello and welcome to Outlook Money's Investment Made Easy podcast series in association with ICICI Prudential Asset Management Limited. I'm Varsha Jain from Outlook Money and your host for this session. The topic of today's podcast is thematic exposure through ETFs. Why and how? While ETFs are becoming popular investment instruments in India, it is important to choose one carefully. The challenge arises because of the myriad types of ETFs available in the market, including thematic ETFs. I would like to welcome Mr. Chintan Haria, Head Investment Strategy, ICICI Prudential AMC, who will help us understand what thematic ETFs are and whether you should take exposure to them or not. Welcome, sir, to this episode.
Thank you, Varsha, and as always, thanking the team at Outlook Money for helping us increase the knowledge and educating our worthy investors of what are the different kinds of passive instruments that they can invest in. And the topic for today is very close to our heart because for the last 2 to 3 years, we've put in special effort in bringing to investors various themes, various smart beta ETFs, and allowing investors an opportunity within the passive space to capture a larger spectrum of the available opportunities in the market. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So, before we start talking about thematic ETFs, could you please explain to our listeners what distinguishes thematic investing from traditional investing strategies?
So typically, if we look at the last 10 to 15 years in India, the popularity has been of market cap led indices. So, for example, the Nifty 50 index, the Sensex 30 index, which choose 50 stocks or 30 stocks, which are the largest in India. And they are weightages of those stocks in the index are on the basis of the free float market cap of those companies. So, essentially, the larger the company on the free float basis, the larger the weight in the index. Now, these are along with that, then later on, mid cap and small cap indices also became popular for passive investing. So you have the Nifty Mid Cap 150 or the Small Cap Select, Small Cap 150, Small Cap 250 indices, where the investors have a chance to participate in the mid cap and small cap space. So these are market cap related, where you have large cap, mid cap, small cap. As far as the thematic investing is concerned, if you look
Mhm.
at the various themes which are available, and I'm extending themes to even sectors, for example, if you want to invest in financial services, which are a growing trend in India, it's a theme wherein you are basically getting the broking companies, the non-banking finance companies, the asset management companies, the insurance companies, as part of the financial services. So you have financial services as one option, you have infrastructure, you have consumption, and you have the sector within sector. If you look at it, you have auto, banks, PSU banks. So in technology, so a lot of options within the thematic space are there. So themes, as you would have probably figured out, are more specific in terms of the universe and the choice of stocks which are there. In consumption, for example, you have those stocks and sectors which are part of consumption and are directly linked to the consumer economy of India. In financial services, I already explained all the various financial services which are there are incorporated in that, and so on and so forth. In infrastructure, you'll have utilities, you have construction companies, you'll have the asset or the larger capital goods players as well. So essentially, these themes are various options that investors have to participate in the markets. Even technology, or for example, various technology companies can be part of tech. So themes, I'm extending to sectors as well, are something which are not linked to the market cap oriented, not linked to the broad based indices, but are specific to those particular theme or sector, which the investor can take advantage of if the investor has a belief that I believe that, okay, India has a long-term growth story possible in financial services. Let me take advantage of that. So that's how I would basically differentiate between market cap based and thematic investing. Thank you.
All right. So here, a thematic investment or the sectoral investment, it's looking synonymous. Is it so?
No. So, in some sense, sectoral investing may be considered as a subset of thematic investing. But thematic investing, for example, like I said, you can have infrastructure, consumption, you can have these are basically broader terms which will have some subsectors. So
Mhm.
themes can have subsectors as well. And then in India, for example, technology itself has so many various stocks across market cap and various different activities within the tech space which the technology providers do. That itself can become a thematic based investing if one looks at it in a broader way. So
All
themes,
right.
by definition, have a subset of sectors if one has to have a connection. But yeah, themes are wider than sectors. And I'm just extending this because many people are not even aware that there are enough sectoral ETFs that the investor can take advantage of.
Mhm.
And themes can allow investors and sectors can allow investors to participate and reflect their own view on the markets away from the market cap based indices, which are otherwise very popular. Thank you.
Okay. Could you also help our listeners understand the basic concepts of ETFs and what distinguishes thematic ETFs from traditional, or you can say index-based ETFs?
So as far as the basics are concerned, like I mentioned, market cap based indices or the traditional popular indices, the selection criteria is on the basis of size of the stock. The largest size get advantage in terms of if a large stock has a larger free float, they get taken up in that space. So large cap, mid cap, small cap, depending on your market capitalization, you get a choice of being in the index. As far as themes are concerned, depending on what you do as a company, right?
Mhm.
You are basically put into the various themes that are available in the market, and your inclusion is basically based on the activity that you do as a company. So that differentiates the thematic investing versus the full market cap investing or market cap based investing. And of course, from a modality of stock selection and the universe, both will have their methodologies and their universe very well spelled out. So that does not change. That's consistent for all ETFs. Also, the way they are traded on the exchange and their buying selling mechanism, that also remains the same. So all other aspects remain the same for both thematic as well as market cap based investing. Just the definition of the universe and the way the stocks are selected changes, and that is well spelled out in the methodology documents. Thank you.
Okay, so there is a properly laid out criteria for doing it.
Yes.
Coming to the next questions, what are the popular investing themes that ETFs invest in India?
So, like I mentioned a little while back, we do believe that if you feel for the next 5, 10 years, India is going to see a significant growth in financial services,
Mhm.
banking and financial services as a theme can be looked at. So financial services theme is something can be looked at from an investment point of view. And we are cognizant of the fact that the markets are at near all-time highs with certain uncertainties in the globe. So you may want to spread out your investments also. So obviously the asset allocation part of it, the time horizon of your investments will matter. And to that extent, we do encourage all of you to have financial advisors or advisors who can help you, or your in your journey of creating your asset allocation. That's very important from your long-term wealth creation perspective. Apart from financial services, we do believe that India, I mean, many of you would have probably traveled outside of India and seen the kind of infrastructure that has been created outside of India. India
Mhm.
lacks infrastructure in many spaces, and I think we are building it slowly but surely in terms of metro networks, better roads, better ports, better airports. And there's a long way to go. So what we believe is that infrastructure as a theme also can be looked at from a growth perspective in India. If we basically believe for the next many years, India is going to grow in terms of its wealth and in terms of its consumption, then the most basic theme of consumption can be looked at, which includes all your basic goods, basic consumption, be it telecom, be it power, be it um, the FMCG basket, so be it auto for that matter. So I think consumption also as a theme is something which can be looked at, and these are something which are quite sensible. The one thing, of course, is 140 Indians, 140 crore Indians, and their health is also important. And healthcare as a expenditure is increasing meaningfully. So you want to participate in the healthcare sector, then there are healthcare ETFs also, which are available for you to invest in. So that theme I think is an evergreen theme in terms of India for the long term. And that is also something which the investors can look at. Thank you.
That's a very broader and very interesting perspective towards it to align the goals and pick the themes for investment. So, can you just elaborate a little more that is there any way to align investment in thematic ETFs with one's financial goals?
So, obviously, the primary goal for any or all of us is to ensure that our wealth increases faster than inflation so that we're able to enjoy a much happier life financially. And towards that, at different points of time, we'll have different goals in life in terms of either education of children or marriage or buying a house, buying a car, or even retirement in terms of very long-term planning. And to that extent, in general, if we look at from a thematic investing perspective, uh, broader themes which I've mentioned, which in India at least have next 5, 10, 15, 20 years of growth written all over it, be it healthcare, be it infrastructure, um, consumption. I do believe, and even financial services, that investors can have a long-term horizon and can build their future around this. At each point of time, different cycles apply to these particular sectors, and to that extent, I would again urge all investors to take necessary help from qualified financial advisors who will be able to guide you basis your own requirement, because each investor will have different will have different earning patterns, income patterns, responsibilities, and goals.
Mm-hmm.
And to that extent, for your goals, you can take advantage with the right thematic investing for sure. But that would be best decided by the financial advisor. Thank you.
All right. And if one wants to invest in thematic funds, then what benefits can one expect going to the thematic funds rather than the conventional funds?
If we basically look at thematic funds, naturally, if you get the investing pattern right and if the theme does well, as we had seen between 2019 and 2021, where the post the pandemic, the healthcare sector did exceedingly well, then you get to that get the get then you basically get the advantage of participating in the theme which does well, and to that extent, your wealth also grows faster than the broad markets. The reverse is also true that if you enter the theme at the wrong time, then you tend to underperform the broader markets, or you can tend to lose relative to the
Mhm.
broader market. So it's important, again, to get the theme right. The biggest advantage is that if you keep getting the themes right, like if you invested in infrastructure after the 10-year underperformance that infrastructure saw between 2008 to 2019, and you invested in infrastructure, you would have had the benefit of seeing the massive re-rating that the infrastructure sector saw in the last 3 years. So I would say that the biggest advantage of thematic investing is that if you can get it right in terms of timing,
Mhm.
in terms of the selection of the theme, then it can give you much better returns than the broader markets. And that is where, if you are not able to gauge the markets well, then a qualified financial advisor who is probably able to get it slightly better or has a better reading of the markets can help you get the right mix of your portfolio. Thank you.
Right. So this is really tricky how to pick the right time to invest in the market and particularly in the thematic ETFs. So, and nobody can be very certain about it. So could you also tell us the risks associated if one going to invest in thematic ETFs?
So if you look at the risks, it is a clear risk of you getting the timing completely wrong. As human behavior or as human beings, we basically get attracted to the successes much more than we get attracted towards the things which are not successful. Even in investing, when a theme has done well, that will attract our attention more than a theme which has not done well. And naturally, it is easier to put money in something which has done well and make more money out of it. But that's not how themes work. So the biggest risk is that you basically follow the trend and enter a theme at its peak. I'll give you some examples to make
Mhm.
myself clear. If you look at the pharma sector in India between 2010 and 2015, it did exceedingly well. the theme worked beautifully well, and pharmaceutical sector outpaced almost all the other sectors. And then from 2015 to 2020, pharmaceutical sector went for a downturn, and then again last 2 3 years it has gone up very sharply. So in themes, I can extend that to even transportation and logistics, which is the automotive sector. If you look at autos in India, we saw between 2014 to 2018 healthy growth in autos, healthy growth in the performance of the underlying shares within transport and automotives, automobiles, that is the passenger vehicles, two-wheelers, four-wheelers. And then from 2018-19 to 2022, we saw auto underperformance. And then again, now the auto sector in the last 1 year has picked up. So I can go on and on in terms of giving examples. The biggest example, which everyone would probably relate to, is the latest example, wherein
Mhm.
international investing had become very, very popular. And in international investing also specifically, the tech-based investments or the technology-based investments became very popular in India for investors investing abroad. And then we saw 2022, the technology related investments coming down very sharply. So if you get
Mm.
the theme wrong, you can get hurt meaningfully. And at the same time, if you get the theme right, you can take advantage. And in the last many years, we've seen enough examples of this happening. So that's one risk which I see for investors. And that's when you need to be cognizant of the fact that they can lose money, they can see the pain also if they invest at the wrong time. And hence, getting the timing right in themes is extremely important, both in terms of when you invest and when you take out the money, right? Thank you.
Does buying thematic ETFs have any special tax implications also?
In terms of taxation, pretty much the same tax applies to diversified or market cap oriented ETFs and the thematic ETF. So ETF investing will attract capital gains tax much the same way across all ETFs, including themes. So if you hold it for more than 1 year, you will get taxed at more than 10% if it's an equity ETF. And if you hold it for less than 12 months and sell the ETF, then you get taxed as short-term capital gain, which is 15% plus some duties which are there. So 15 and 10% for less than 12 months and more than 12 months holding, much like how equity assets are taxed. Similarly, your thematic ETFs and your market cap based ETFs are also taxed in the same way as equity instruments. Thank you.
All right, it is same as equity instruments.
Yes.
Okay. Now, what other factors should investors consider when choosing between thematic ETFs and other type of ETFs?
So if you look at the factors, the first factor that you should look at is whether the theme which is being chosen uh, is showing enough promise in the near future or in the next 2 3 years for you to make your investments. The second factor is the valuation of the theme relative to the market. More often than not, we've seen investors getting attracted to a theme when it is extremely expensive relative to the market. So one can look at versus the market, is this theme particularly cheaper? Also, what you can see is that relative to its past, is that particular theme cheaper? So say for health, for example, healthcare, relative to past had become very cheap in 2018-19. And then basically you could make out that healthcare is a sector which can do well. Technology had become extremely cheap in February 2018, so the
Mhm.
entire tech segment did exceedingly well after that. So if the valuations become cheap for a particular theme, that is one factor which helps relative to market and relative to its own past history. And in terms of, let's say, the human sentiment or the sentiment of the market, if no one is ready to look at a particular theme, if investors are staying away from a theme, if the investors are not talking about that theme, then generally we've seen that those themes end up doing much better. So I think if you avoid momentum and if you basically avoid crowding out a particular space and you simply invest in those themes which are cheaper, which people are not talking about, and have promise in the next 3 to 4 years because of the base themes or the sectors within that theme doing well, then you end up getting the benefit. So look at valuations, look at the sentiment, and look at the cycle within the theme from a next 3 to 4 year perspective. If it's looking good, then you can make good cyclical returns in themes. Thank you.
Okay, that's right. Thank you so much, Mr. Haria, for joining us today. Our listeners are sure to benefit from the insights and details discussed in this episode. With this, we come to the end of today's episode of Investment Made Easy podcast. Listeners, we hope you enjoyed our conversation today. Please don't forget to share your comments and feedback on this episode. You can also share your suggestions and questions at letters@outlookmoney.com. We'll be back with our next edition soon. Till then, stay safe, stay invested, and keep following Outlook Money, your favorite personal finance magazine.